That's it.
Morning.
To the chase.
Bring this meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order, and we'll start with Veterans Office. Mr. Merrihew.
Thank you very much, sir. I do not have a report.
Okay, thank you. County Sealer has been excused. He's meeting with state weights and measures folks. Board of Elections, I see we have anything to report?
No, we don't.
Any questions for the Board of Elections? All right, being none, thank you very much. The District Attorney.
I have no formal report unless someone has any questions on the certain information that's playing in the last few weeks.
Any questions for the District Attorney? Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. No, thank you.
Emergency Services has been excused. They're in Albany for a conference. Emergency Medical Services is not here today, but I was wondering if Mr. Preston would give us a brief on the meeting with the state last week.
Well, I can. Myself, Patty, and 3 other people from Essex County traveled to Albany. We had a meeting with Paul Francis, who is the Deputy Secretary in charge of Health and Human Services that oversees the Department of Health and numerous Department of Health officials in regards to the EMS crisis in rural New York. I guess I'm hopeful that maybe we can get somewhere. They would not relent at all on the training aspect of it. They feel that, it was important life-saving measures that was put into the basic EMT that resulted in the increase of training, and they really weren't too conducive to listening at all in regards to that. However, there were several other suggestions that were brought forward, which basically had to do with being able to do courses online, with the problem with the traveling. There's a lot of issues out there, small issues as far as that they could do something now. The lack of even educating kids in school about this is going to be a career opportunity coming forward. They did also indicate that there is consolidation funding out there, and that as we work through this study and come up with a conclusion and hopefully a path forward, we would be eligible for that funding. They asked us to put together our list of what we think, with the exception of the training, that we could do going forward to make things better, easier, and the fact of, the discussion went on for an hour and a half in regards to even if we were consolidated today, there's a shortage of EMTs. You can't hire people, and everybody's stealing from each other as far as the current ones we have now. And again, that's not just Essex County, that's all over rural New York. Again, a discussion about budgets and how this is a budget buster. When the governor's pushing consolidation and tax cap, this blows it out of the water. So they did listen. They asked for us to put together a priority list of recommendations and get it to them, and they promised that we would have another meeting before the end of the year. So I'm at least hopeful that at least they're listening, that we were able to get that meeting to begin with, and hopefully we will keep pressing them that there's things that they can do today to assist, and that we can get some movement on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. Sheriff's Office, I'm not here right now. Probation. Any questions for probation? Thank you very much. Public Defender, I don't see here today. One other item for this is the dog tethering proposed local law, which is sent out a copy a couple weeks ago, and then was sent out with the agenda, and there's a copy on the agenda here. Proposed local law number 3. After the last draft was tabled at Ways and Means, I think it was 2 months ago, the task force went back and took a look at some concerns and made some alterations and changes in it. One was the size of a enclosure, which I believe when they went to 10 by 10, and then additional changes to the hours of tethering was altered. And then Mr. Manning, do you have other changes that...
Those are basically the two major changes that we made to the local law. The dog enclosure can be no less than 100 square feet. That was changed from 150 square feet. And then dogs that are attached to a fixed point, we changed that. They couldn't be attached to a fixed point like a pipe or a spike for more than 4 continuous hours or 8 cumulative hours during a 24-hour period. That's just to a fixed point. Then we changed the law with respect to tethering to a dog run or a trolley system or in an enclosure to allow for 12 cumulative hours in a 24-hour period. So that would provide for people who go to work would be able to put them on a run or put them in an enclosure for at least 12 cumulative hours during a 24-hour period. Those are the 3 changes that we basically made.
So based on the changes that were made to the draft, the object of this is to reintroduce or to introduce this as a change. The old one is tabled at Ways and Means, and so I guess the strategy would be that we would take it off the table, pull the resolution, and move this forward. If the board wanted to move to go toward public hearing on this local law. So I guess I'd ask for a motion to introduce this proposed local law to be scheduled for a public hearing. Mr. Miga, do I have a second? Mr. Monty, discussion? Mr. Moore.
I guess I still have concern. I haven't really been able to go through this in detail. I would express concern over the 100 square feet still. And what I looked into before, different sites that had these type of enclosures, many of them were at 10 by 5, which is 50 square feet. Now, I don't know what people bought, but what do you do about a situation where you've got people that have already purchased this enclosure, they're 10 by 5, they're 50 square feet. I just have a concern there. I do appreciate everything that the committee has done and trying to make some of these changes, but that's just the one thing, like I said, I haven't been able to see it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Mr. Preston?
I've honestly heard more about this than I heard about the 7% tax increase. I've heard from at least a dozen people, and they're all against it for one reason or another. There's a lot of different concerns in there about the hours and whatnot, and the fact that if somebody working for a living, they can't leave their dog out, according to this. Anyone working a normal 8-hour shift. I've just heard numerous people that have numerous problems with it for one reason or another, and therefore I can't support it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I just have one.
Mr. Manning?
I just want to clarify one thing. The law does provide that you can leave your dog out for 12 continuous hours as long as... I'm sorry, the law does provide that you can leave your dog out for 12 continuous hours as long as it's either on a dog run, a trolley system, or a fenced enclosure. It does not provide for if you're just hooking them up to a spike in the ground, a fixed point. So not taking a side, but just for future reference.
Ms. Ferry?
Yeah, in rereading this, I still haven't found an area where it says that the person making the formal complaint to the dog officer or to a court or judges has to come in and fill out the complaint themselves. In other words, is it still saying that a person can call a dog enforcement or animal enforcement officer and just over the phone make a complaint about a dog?
If the law... I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Dan.
If the law enforcement officer sees a violation, he can swear out the appropriate criminal complaint. If he doesn't, then he will need to... He can swear out the complaint, but he'll need a supporting deposition from someone who has seen the violation. Okay. So it can work 2 different ways depending on how the facts of the situation.
So they will need a deposition from a person who actually viewed the action.
Yes, unless the officer has seen it,
Correct. Okay, thank you.
then they don't.
Any questions, comments? Mr. Tyler?
I'm not on the committee, but it's my understanding, all we're doing today is so we can have some hearings and listen to some people and see how, the community feels about this. And then we vote on it after that, correct?
That's correct. This is to introduce the law. Any other questions or comments? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Monty.
Yeah, I think, Bill, this is no different than someone making a noise complaint or something of that nature. If the person isn't willing to file a formal complaint, there is no, and if the person that responds finds nothing, there's no just cause. But if the person who calls in, if I was to call and said that Mr. Tyler's dogs were tied out illegally, the animal control officer shows up and finds that everything's fine, then either I've got to put it down in writing that this happened, or guess what, it didn't happen. I think it's no different than any law, any accusation made.
I guess my concern is the person filing the initial complaint has to identify themselves, not just call up and say my neighbor's dog has been tied out for 8 hours. They have to identify who they are, than to just anonymously file complaints because you have a dislike for your neighbor or a dislike for whatever. I mean, how can you expect the law officer to follow up on a complaint when the person doesn't want to acknowledge who they are? I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. But
That's a matter of judgment on the officer's part. If there's an anonymous complaint and he goes out and investigates it and he sees it, then he can go forward.
and this question is coming from my animal control officer. It's like, okay, my office received a call 2 weeks ago about a untethered dog chasing tethered dogs down the road. The owner fell down, scrubbed her knees. She calls me. Well, you know what? Call the animal control officer. No, I don't want to do that because I don't want to throw my neighbor under the bus. Well, there's nothing I can do for you. You need to go the proper steps, and people just just don't want to let their neighbor know who's complaining about them. So again, I don't think that these cases, unless the person wants to identify themselves, are going to be followed up by I can only speak for my own animal control officer.
In my town, the same issue. I mean, the dog control officer will send them out if somebody calls in and says there's an imminent violation or an imminent violation going, but he gets down there, doesn't see anything, or the dog's gone or something else like that, then the person who reported has got to swear out a complaint. Mr. Politi?
I'm not on the committee, but unless there are substantial changes to this proposed law, I'm not supporting it at all. I can live with prohibitions under Section 5A, but nothing else. I'm not paying $20,000 a year to code enforcement officers in my town to have civil penalties collected and dispersed to the county of Essex. And I haven't spoken to a single law enforcement officer to date that says they will enforce this proposed law. So I have no intention of supporting it as is.
Thank you. Mr. Tyler?
Just off the top of my head, has there ever been any discussion on the county level to have a county-wide animal control officer? Because in our towns, I'm sure it's like this in other towns, we have a hard time, once we get one, to keep one, and we've had one for a couple of years now, but we've had several complaints this year, and he's not going to be around much longer. I don't know if this is a county-wide issue. Maybe we could entertain that at some point.
There was a discussion of that when putting together the initial State of Animal Cruelty report that was put in 2015 about the idea of putting forward a county-wide animal control system, and that has not been brought forward yet to the board as a recommendation. But if the task force continues, then that could be something that comes down the line. Mr. Giordano?
So my understanding of this is really to pinpoint those people who are malnourishing their animals and mistreating their animals, right? I mean, there's a lot of discretion, I think, that goes with this law, just like any law, even with like the speed limit law. I mean, we don't enforce for 2 miles over the speed limit. I can't imagine that if someone calls up and they go and see some healthy animals that they're going to be penalized for those. I mean, there's a lot of discretion, I would think, in the eyes of the officer who is going to be on the scene evaluating the condition of those dogs. But from my understanding, from talking with the people who are on this committee, I mean, it's really after the animals that are mistreated and are not being taken care of properly, and to do something about them, because right now there isn't anything to really handle that. So I know there's a lot of pieces in this which seem to be debatable, 100 square feet or things of that sort. I mean, certainly those things can be argued. I mean, probably the size of the dog would need to be taken into account with regards to the size. I mean, we're talking about a Siberian Husky versus a little Chihuahua. I mean, 100 square feet is a considerable difference in terms of space to run. But I think, just thinking like other laws, again, the speed limit law, you don't get pulled over until you're going 11 miles out, over the speed limit typically, before you're charged with anything. So I'd see a lot of discretion still to be applied to this. And the complaints that I've been hearing, people are really concerned, but people who've been calling up have healthy animals. They take care of their animals. I don't see any reason why, aside from a neighbor who wants to bicker with their neighbor to get him in trouble, would have any violation against them if they are taking care of their animals. So I think it's a good thing to take to public hearing and to hear what the public has to say.
Thank you. Could I ask the district attorney to just kind of make a quick interpretation or her feeling on that?
Okay. We have rehashed this law to the point where we welcome any kind of revisions. We've actually taken into consideration the hours. We've taken into consideration the size of the pens. We've taken into consideration law enforcement concerns who sat on the committee with us and went through the entire statute in regards to enforceability. So I'm not sure where the comments are coming from that there's been no law enforcement support. Maybe in your jurisdiction, they should come to speak to me or somebody on the committee. We had the Sheriff's Department, we had state police involved in the drafting of this. Those were their revisions as far as the time frames. So I'm not sure where that's coming from. In regards to the concerns that Supervisor Farabee brought up, any bickering amongst neighbors, they could pick any law out there now and use it to harass each other. So I don't think that's an argument that really we need to worry about. I think Supervisor Giordano hit the nail right on the head. This is discretionary, and if you read the wording, and I think our county attorney can point that out, it says may enforce, not shall, not must, may. That's discretionary, very discretionary, and we put that in there for a purpose. If there's any other revisions that you feel, like Mr. Politi had mentioned, without some things being taken out, he's not going to support it. Let me know what those are, and I'll bring it back to the committee. We're trying to rework this to the best of our ability. We're not going to please everyone. If you can find me one law where everybody agrees on it, let me know, because that's impossible. And so we're working hard. We're going to do what we can, and all we want to do is get it to a public hearing. Let the public decide. If they decide not to vote for it, then so be it. But at least it should leave here and allow the people to voice their concerns publicly, because I'm not hearing it. I have had no complaints to my office regarding the statute.
Mr. Moore?
Have any of these proposed laws been sent to any of the town justice people or to the animal control officers in the town?
I have not personally reached out to each one of the local officials except for the supervisor. So, we haven't reached down that far. I know there's been discussions with members of the committee, with various animal control officers and justices, in the county, the ones that would talk to them in the preparation as well.
Yeah,
Just for the record, town justices would be precluded
They can't.
from commenting.
Right, they can't.
Town justice can't get involved in any legislation. And in regards to the fine money as well, the county law, this provides for the money to come back to the county. Ag and markets, the money doesn't stay. So anything that's prosecuted now under agricultural markets law goes to the state. So I don't understand where that reasoning, this actually helps the county in revenue.
I just want to make a comment. The law was sent to each and every supervisor, so feel free to share that with your code enforcement officers. I think that's what we anticipated would happen. That's why we didn't send it out to them.
Anything else?
A couple things. As far as that money coming back to the county, I think the towns are going to need that because we're going to be replacing animal control officers probably every 6 months. Now, if there's a complaint filed, and I don't believe Mr. Politi's dog is being taken care of, and I write a complaint, well, he's got a small child, no, he's got a dog in a pen. And the law states 100 square feet. No. There's only 80 square feet. There's been a formal complaint written. When is it that you have a law that someone has a complaint that you can say, that's fine, he's got 80? The law states 100 square feet. So who is going to make these determinations? Now, if you call my animal control officer with a violation, I'm sure he's going out there and he's going to prosecute this. Who is going to say, well, 80 feet's good for him? Whose discretion is that going to be?
It's in the law if the law passes, and it's the discretion of the law enforcement officer, just like a speeding ticket, you're 10 over.
That
maybe
seems
Mr.
like
Manelli,
you're putting
not
a
gonna
lot of
get ticket.
responsibility on the law enforcement
That's
officer.
their job. We have a lot of discretion. That's a lot of
I don't believe my animal control
responsibility.
officer is going to agree with this, personally. Thank you.
Then it says may enforce. May enforce.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Mr. Motti?
I think as an animal control officer, if I respond to a call with that he doesn't have 100 square feet, and I go out there and I'm looking at a Newfie in there, well, there's an issue. But if I'm looking at a Dachshund in there and he's got 80 square feet, common sense tells you there's no issue. Even though it does say that, it's just a point that they can use. Am I correct?
Right, correct. I mean, we had a case 2 weeks ago where they had 3 labs stuck in an enclosure this big. I would dare say if it was 4x4, 3 of them zip-tied inside there. Discretionary or mandatory? I mean, at that point, it was mandatory. There was no room, but you're absolutely right, Mr. Monti. It's discretion. If you go there and there's a Chihuahua in a 10x5 enclosure, is that enough room? If the dog can walk around, the dog has enough space to meander and get around and be able to circle, and if you stick a Newfoundland in that, I don't think so. I mean, you're talking about a long period of time that these dogs are going to be in an enclosure. And if they can't get around and can't defecate, urinate away from where they have to eat, then that's a problem. And it's the same with those dogs. They were actually pulling the cage over, shoveling the poop, and then pushing the cage back over. And they thought that was sufficient. That's what we're talking about.
If you wanted to, we could change the law to say, unless a smaller area is deemed adequate and safe by the enforcing officer.
Perfect. There's always a way to amend it. That's what we need, the suggestions, though, now before it comes to the public hearing.
So you're making an amendment to the...
I'm not. I mean, if you guys want to.
To restate that, then?
It would be 100 square feet unless a smaller area is deemed adequate and safe by the code enforcement, or by the enforcement officer.
Does the person who made the motion second? Motion as amended.
Oh, sorry. And then a vote on the motion as amended. Did we do that?
Okay. So if there's no other comments, we'll vote on the motion as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
You need a better show of hands.
Can I get a show of hands of all in favor?
Call again, please.
Committee.
Yeah.
You don't need way to vote.
Thank you. Did you get that? All opposed? One. All right, thank you very much. Motion carries. Is there any other business to come before the public committee?
Yes.
Mr. Morrow?
Supervisor Marnell called this morning and would ask if we'd pass a resolution of a condolence, and everybody's got a copy of it on your desk. the resolution of condolence to the town and community of Harwood, Vermont, because of the horrific explosive car crash on Interstate 89 this past week. I'd like to move that, please.
Second.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more business to come before the Public Safety Committee? Mr. Giordano?
Yeah, hey, and I had asked him about the taxi law. Is there any...
Yeah.
I know you're busy with other stuff.
No, it's done. I've been without staff for part of Thursday, Friday, and today, so it should be ready for, I'll have it ready for personnel.
For what?
Personnel, is that?
Oh, even if you want to bring it to this committee next month, I mean, if you...
Well, I'd rather get it,
Great, okay.
get it in the pipeline, get it started. It's done, so it just needs to be typed up.
Any other business for public safety? Okay, we're adjourned.